good evening. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of We Are Listening, which is my monthly live stream, which is a lovely space, a safe space where we can talk about all things to do with mental health, creativity, and life. And every month I'm joined by an awesome guest, and I'm going to introduce you properly in a minute to my guest today, who's over here. It's Mr. Gilles Peterson. Hi, Giles. How are you?
I'm very well.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
If you've not watched the stream before, we want you to join this conversation. So we've recorded this live. We've recorded this in advance, pre-recorded it, but it's going out live, and we're online right now to reply to any comments you have. So please use the comments section to ask any questions and interact with each other and just share. That's what this is all about. It's a kind of a space to have a conversation. And I'm so excited to have this gentleman here with me, Mr. Gilles Peterson. If you don't know who he is, he's a legendary broadcaster, label boss, and just general kind of music expert, I'd describe him as, and was a real genuine soundtrack to my childhood and a lot of the other people in my world who all look up to this guy. So it's amazing to have him here. So let's get on with it. Please welcome to We Are Listening, Mr. Gilles Peterson. Hi, Giles.
Hey, can I clap myself?
Yeah, clap yourself, man. You deserve it.
Weirdly enough, in a week from now, I'm touring next week. So when you're watching this, everyone at home, I'll be in, is it next Thursday?
Yeah, Wednesday.
So I'll be in San Jose DJing.
Cool.
But then it's in the evening, so this is like, they're behind, aren't they? So if it's at night, it'll be about lunchtime for me. So I can probably interact.
Giles is having his lunch right now.
Yeah, I can interact as well. So I can, it's all good. I can do some stuff with you. But yeah, no, it's good to be here.
Yeah, man.
And thank you very much for coming to, I invited you onto a little thing that I did a week of sort of awareness for mental health in music, which we called Safer Place. In Stonington, you came and spoke, and it was great. It was really amazing. And I was in your seat. I was interviewing. Well, not for every interview. I didn't interview you, but yeah. And I had the pleasure of interviewing Goldie.
Yeah, I saw some of that. That was so good.
Easiest ever interview, because I asked him, I think, 3 questions, 3 questions in 1 hour, and he went on to entertain us and really gave us. I mean, it was the most amazing, sort of uplifting experience of his life in music and like it was really crazy. So yeah, it was really enjoyable doing that.
Yeah, so that was so Look Up Pop Up. That was the name of the little festival. Wasn't it?
Yeah. What am I talking about? Absolutely. You spun me out by talking about a safer place, because we were working with. It was really connected to the school where my kids go to in Stonington, called Stonington School, where they have been in all sorts of places around the world. There's been a lot of problems and youth suicide and some heavy issues that we felt we wanted to put more focus on that and help and bring the people from the school in and have talks with musicians and artists and stuff. So it was really a case of just putting a bit of light on a really problematic issue which is affecting all of us, parents and children and humanity, the modern day. So it was a way to do that and also to be able to kind of bring the community together, which I'm really into. I think that a lot of what I do as a DJ from back in the day, it was all about belonging to something that I was passionate about, and club culture and going out and travelling far to go and hear my favourite DJs or go and see my bands and meeting like-minded people was really, important. And it pushes us all and motivates us all and encourages us all to do more of what we enjoy and to be, to work with each other as a community. And so again, locally, I really wanted to do something within where I live, Stoke Newington, Hackney, and so it was really, really good.
I thought it was really good. Like I came and hung out quite a bit, because I think there was like a launch event, and then I was involved in a talk, and then also did a show in Stoke Newington in a little church.
Yeah, the old church.
The old church.
Yeah, amazing place, isn't it?
So lovely. And then I met all the people so Safer Place is the charity that the funds were going to.
Yeah.
And that was run by 2 mothers who both lost sons in the same year. Is that right?
Yeah.
Which is obviously, so there was like this real backdrop of, tragic backdrop.
Son and daughter.
Was it a son and a daughter? But then the actual event itself was the opposite of a tragedy. It was really uplifting, and I just remember there was one moment at the show I played at the old church, so I did my gig, and after that, two lads came up on stage who'd known one of the young people who had died to suicide, and they performed this rap that they'd written in his honor.
That's right.
And all the kids in the room knew every single word, and everyone was crying, but it was also really empowering and uplifting, and like everything that I felt it should be. So yeah, I felt really honoured to be part of that. So thanks for inviting me to be there. And
it's interesting because I think that when I was sort of the age of those young people, there weren't generations above me kind of trying to have that. Not where I was coming from anyway. So, it's interesting having that exchange and being able to do things together and talk about issues together and have it out. I think that's something that certainly my generation didn't have as much of that. And so the more we can do to connect, the better it is. And of course, we've got a lot of experience certainly in music and that side, which is an area that a lot of young people want to go towards. And I think it's full of its own pitfalls and dangers, which need to be spoken about. Yeah. And I don't think anyone really told me about that stuff. When I was growing up and going DJing and stuff, I was just like going in without any idea of, Same, to be honest. And like, I just wonder, because I sometimes feel like if I was a kid now, I'd probably be given a lot more support with things like mental health than I did. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. But like, so is that, there's more support now, which is good, but also I don't remember any of my friends like committing suicide when I was at school. Like, so is it that the issues got worse and that's why the support's there, or? Yeah, it's a bit both, isn't it? I mean, obviously there's so much more information now. There's so many more sort of alleyways you can go down in your bedroom, on your phone, to find out about the dark places and to be fascinated by that. So that wasn't there when I was growing up. I mean, I remember I used to go to school in London. I used to live in the south, in the suburbs. At the age of 9, I used to catch the train from Cheam to Victoria Station, get the tube, and then go to school.
9 years old.
9 years old. There's no big deal then.
Yeah, right.
It's crazy, right? If you think about it, you wouldn't.
That's not safe, Giles. No,
it's true though, isn't it? But in those days, it wasn't like my parents were particularly, it was quite normal.
That was just safe.
It was kind of normal. Well, it wasn't safe. I mean, there was an awful lot of underlying stuff, which when I think back to the kind of, people that were around and getting away with stuff they were getting away with was dark. Yeah. And but anyway, got through it. But I think these days there is just so much more that you can just get yourself caught up in. Right. And because I think social media is probably the main cause of that.
Yeah, that's the topic that seems to come up on this stream every time. Is about, and obviously because we're using social media to talk about it, and it's kind of, from my point of view, I'm doing a TED talk in April, which is called "Social Media Saved My Life," and it's kind of like I really want to encourage people to look at both sides of that picture, because everybody knows how toxic social media can be, and especially for young people who are kind of, it's like everything you do is then going to be rated on a likes system, and like that just wasn't around when I grew up. Like you could have a certain amount of privacy in your life. But it's also can be this amazing platform. Like we're here right now trying to talk about it, trying to raise awareness, trying to encourage a conversation. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like if we use it responsibly and we use it kind of proactively, it could actually be the answer as well as the problem. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
I mean, I'm off phone at the moment.
You said that when you got here. So you detoxing your phone?
Yeah, a little bit. I didn't mean to, but I left. I was DJing in Bristol on Friday, and I did the classic, left it by the decks, and the next thing I knew, I was in Swindon on my way home, and I realised my phone wasn't there, which was kind of good that I didn't realise it for at least an hour and a half that I didn't have my phone.
That's quite impressive. They didn't even need your phone for an hour and a half.
No, it's interesting, but anyway, and then they haven't sent it back to me. But actually, every now and again, I do that on purpose. I just don't use social media, or just try and stay away from it. And fun enough, one of my sons actually, when we were away on holiday last year, we were abroad, and he stayed over he was staying a couple of extra weeks. And as we left to say goodbye, come back home, he gave me his phone. Says, "Dad, I'm going phoneless,
Going off grid,
going off grid." So I was really impressed.
Yeah.
And but his mum said, "No, you got to keep your phone because we want to get hold of you." But yeah, it was interesting. But yeah, I think a lot more people are doing that. I think that's good for your head. I mean, I think it's but. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are talking about it, saying it and doing it, two different things, right?
Well, yeah. Again, it is something that's come up on this stream. It's like try and have a detox, but like like even just hearing you talk about not having your phone is making me feel anxious. I'd be like, well, what about my maps? What about like, do you know what I mean? How's everyone going? How am I going to know what's going on?
Oh, I got here without a phone.
Did you use a paper map?
Yeah, I checked it out, and I was just confused because you said there was a Tesco's nearby, and I couldn't find that, and that freaked me out. But I got to the high street, which is where we are. And so I did it. Like old school, but to be honest with you, I don't use sat-nav anyway, because it always takes me down the wrong way, and I always end up getting more frustrated. Unless I'm going sort of somewhere up north or somewhere, outside of London, not just up north, where I really need to get to a gig or something, I might do it then. But generally,
So detox.
Get the map out.
Yeah, nice.
It's good for the mind.
Guys, if you just joined us, we're listening Episode 8. It's a live stream where we are talking about all things creativity, life, well-being, and I'm joined by legendary broadcaster and DJ Mr. Gilles Peterson. If you have any questions for us, please type them into the comments, and I've got a few that we'll get to in a minute that people have sent in advance, so thank you for those. I'm really fascinated to hear about what it was like when you were a kid. So you talked already about being 9 years old, getting the train into central London by yourself every day to go to school. Like, where does music fit into all of that, and then how did that kind of become your obsession? Like, was that from that early age, and was it to do with all of that?
No, really. My brother was actually responsible. I'm sort of thinking now. My brother was responsible for taking me to school.
Okay.
But he'd just go off and
he was irresponsible.
He was 8 years older than me, so he was like towards the end. He was just he saw his girlfriend and he was gone. But no. But yeah, no. The reason I was going to London at the time was because I was going to the French lycée because my mum's French, and I came over here when I was 3-4 years old, and grew up here, very much in a French circle. So kind of not really in a sort of French bubble, not really interacting with the English community as much, but just going to a French school, French-speaking school. And then my parents decided when I was 10 to switch me to the British system. And so I had to kind of get out of the French school, go and learn sort of to write in English, and to even sort of, I had to start from scratch in a way, although I could speak English. And so the first thing I realised when I ended up going to a boys' school at the age of 10, 11 years old, was that I needed to be, to fit in, sport was an important thing. But most importantly, music was an important thing, and that was the difference between the French school, where the tribal kind of ness of belonging to some sort of group wasn't as important. Everyone sort of wore what they wore, and there didn't seem to be that pressure. But when I went to the English school, you had to sort of almost decide what tribe you were going to join, whether it was going to be a skinhead or a punk or a mod, or into rock and roll, heavy metal.
What kind of year were we talking about here?
We're talking 1979, 1980, or even a bit before. So punk, 76, 77. Yeah, probably 76. Yeah, because I was born in 64, so yeah, it would have been punk. Punk rock and jazz funk. And and at my school there was 3 boys who basically showed me the way, and they were like, well, I don't know how I got there, but I suddenly ended up at someone's house, and their sister had really good records, and I heard some great music, and I was like, this is my music.
So cool.
So I became a soul boy.
Do you remember what those tunes were?
Yeah, it was Earth, Wind and Fire, All in All album, things like more obscure artists like Bobby Caldwell and people like Fatback Band and Cameo and groups like that. And she had really good taste. And when I look back to that time, I'm thinking, wow, I was really fortunate to go into that bedroom where those records were. And then to hear more of that music, you had to kind of find it. You couldn't hear it on the radio in England. There was only a couple of radio shows that might play it. Greg Edwards on Capital Radio and Robbie Vincent on Radio London. There was no sort of nothing on Radio 1, you know, or anything like that. So you'd have to listen to those shows, all pirate radio. And there was a radio station at the time called Radio Invicta, which was the first pirate station that I sort of got hip to, and they played sort of soul and jazz funk music every Sunday afternoon.
Amazing.
So I used to tune into that and want to be on there, you know. And I suddenly just became more and more infatuated by the music and the culture and this sort of mysterious world that I had no clue about when I was growing up. So yeah, I was completely hooked.
And when did you start like collecting the vinyls and buying the
Probably
records?
when I was about 12, 13, 14, and then my mum and dad went off on their wedding anniversary, and I'd had an Electric Railway set. All that I know is that when they got back that weekend, the Electric Railway set had gone, and I had twin turntables instead. and I had a few records, and I started practicing. And the twin decks that I had, there was a cassette player, which recorded the decks, and so I got a mic and started sort of imagining that I was on the radio and started doing these imaginary radio shows. And then my next door neighbour was also into this, and then we somehow found a person who built transmitters, and so by the age of 15 I'd bought a transmitter and set up a pirate station from my garden shed. and we used to start, and then we started broadcasting, you know, 2 or 3 hours from Epsom Downs, which is in South London, which is quite a high spot. And we'd broadcast, and these 2-hour pre-recorded radio shows from the garden shed, and then we'd give a phone number out on these shows, and the phone number was the phone box by the pub at the top of the hill. And so we'd go and we'd turn everything on, press the play button, broadcast this signal through a tree and an aerial that we put connected to the transmitter and a car battery, and then we go and run into the phone box and wait for the phone to ring, and we'd maybe get 1 or 2 phone calls from someone living in Thornton Heath or Croydon. Go, we're listening to your station, and we were like, oh my God, this is amazing. So that was how we kind of, you know, went on to. Then I got hooked on pirate radio, and then this radio station, Radio Invicta, that I was telling you about, they got busted by the DTI, Department of Trade and Industry, which is a little unit that would go around London, led by a man called Eric Gotts, legendary figure in the busting world, and he'd go around. It was a very small team. They didn't have a lot of money to bust the pirates. It was early days, and so basically this guy Eric had busted Radio Invicta, and they didn't have a transmitter, and the guy who built their transmitter built my transmitter. So he got in touch with me and said, look, they need a transmitter, and I said, on the condition that I get a show. Hey. So that's how I got myself onto Radio Invicta. Amazing. And then they didn't really want to give me a show at the beginning, but what they did is they let me put the aerials up. So I was driving. So I was 17 by now, and I was driving about in my little Mini, and I was that boy who would go up the tower blocks at 4 o'clock in the morning in Leighton or in Crystal Palace, and I'd get up to the roof and put the aerials up. And so I kind of got to know London through putting aerials up, and then eventually I got a show, and that was the beginning of my career as a sort of official radio person.
That's so awesome, man. I love the way you just made it happen yourself. You found a way. You found a transmitter. You found a mic. It just like the need came from within, and you found a way to do it. Yeah. That's really cool, and I feel like that's really important. Like for all of us to find a way to let out what our calling is, whatever it is we need to do, what we need to say. Do you know what I mean? Do you feel like that helped you, like knowing that you had this thing you wanted to do, you had this dream? I
didn't really know what I wanted. I just knew that, I knew that I loved that, and I was obsessed by that, and I was obsessed by anything to do with the music that I was hearing, and I wanted to I was following all the DJs. If I wasn't going to their events, I was reading their lists and their charts, and in Blues and Soul or Black Echoes or the fanzines that existed at the time. I used to go and follow my bands that I loved, like jazz funk bands, Level 42, Light of the World, High Tension. There was a really good movement of bands in those days, and I was that boy who would literally just be there on his own, waiting outside the dressing room door to get my record signed. Or I used to go to, I used to get into clubs or bars or pubs where DJs were playing, and I was literally that boy on his own with a bit of paper and writing down the name of the records the DJ was playing. That's how you got your information back then. And slowly I would just build up the sort of knowledge of that music, you know, and that music was a specific kind of music, which was, you know, left of centre black music in a way, and music of black origin, and so, you know, jazz and funk, and this is before hip hop even, and you know, anything like house music. This is up until 1980. It was in 84 was very much sort of, you know, jazz, funk and soul. So that was what I was doing, and you know, I mean, I didn't do well in my studies and all that, you know, everything, you know, went out the window. And actually I look at my children now, and they're at university, or one of them is, and having, you know, time of his life. It's great, what a brilliant thing, and I kind of regret not having had that sort of experience in a way. But on the other hand, you know, my parents left actually London very soon after I kind of got adult, really. When I was 19 they went, and so I was living on my own in London, and I had to survive. I had to hustle to survive. That was the only way I was going to pay my rent. And so, you know, I had the twin decks, and I would do anything. I'd go and play at weddings and bar mitzvahs, and you know, I used to go to wine bars and say, look, you know, let me put my decks in here and I'll bring 50 people along. And I used to arrange coach trips to clubs and get 60 people on a coach. I'd say to the club, if I can bring 60 people up from Sutton, will you let me DJ? And that's how I got myself into the better known clubs, because I would bring a crowd with me. And that's how you did it. You know, you just had to sort of just find a reason for them to want to have you. And you know, obviously a lot of the time, you know, you'd walk out of there with you know, not many people would turn up on the bus, and you'd be in trouble, but you know, you got there in the end.
So then you'd lose money if that happened, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you know, it was, you know, there was an awful, I mean, you had, you know, it was just, it was a long journey for me to go from being this sort of, you know, 17-year-old boy, you know, playing in gay clubs and any club that would take me. You know, I would literally just go there and play my records and, you know, get paid 20 quid, 30 quid, whatever it was. That was pretty much enough to pay for the bus, you know, to get me home, and a couple of records from the shop in the market. You know, I was lucky in Sutton. There was a shop in Sutton Market that got imports. They used to get the imports in from America and some Japanese records and all the white labels, which is how the British bands would release their records on white label first. So they'd do these test copies, and there'd be maybe a few hundred that would go to these specialist shops, and I was the first one in the queue to get the white labels.
Amazing.
And then, you know, that's how you made your name. You know, you made your name by literally having the records that other DJs didn't have.
Yeah.
And actually, you know, I probably didn't spend money on anything else apart from records until it's probably after I was 30 that I started spending record money on sort of clothes or.
So it really was an obsession, right?
Yeah.
It was a driving force.
It had to be, because that was the only way you could be at the top of, you know, you could rise to the top of what you were about.
And like, I'm curious, like, what did you keep every record you bought, or did you just have to sell them to make space, like, or did you just have this huge library of
well, I mean, you know, obviously when I'm starting this, you know, it's a few hundred records, you know, it's not thousands of records. So the problem with numbers didn't really happen until probably when I got to 30. But when I had to actually move out of my house of records and move to another house because I had a family and I couldn't put the two together, so I had the records in one flat, my family in another flat. But yeah,
so that was in the 90s, right? Mid-90s.
Yeah. So but yeah, so until then I was just collecting, buying records, and just, you know, that was what I was doing. And I was playing 5-6 nights a week, and you know, doing lots of other things as well, like running record labels and doing radio. But my main sort of job, I suppose, was being a club DJ, was just being a disc jockey, but being that disc jockey who played slightly what we call maybe backroom DJ. So, you know, I wasn't sort of, so I'd be playing a lot of big clubs in England and London where I'd be like, they'd say, oh yeah, we'll put Giles in the back room, you know, for the 50 other people, but the files will go in the main room and then you can have the little back room. And that's really how I did it. And then I started sort of traveling a lot around Europe. So, you know, I had residencies in Paris, in Vienna, in Cologne. So, you know, as a DJ, I'd be DJing 4 or 5 nights a week in England and 1 night a week abroad.
Yeah.
That was one of the first DJs, I think, to be kind of going to Heathrow with boxes of records. Luckily, in those days, they wouldn't, you know, you wouldn't get done for excess luggage.
Yeah.
But I used to carry, you know, 2 big boxes everywhere with me.
Yeah. Do you still use vinyl when you DJ now?
Well, funnily enough, I'm back on that a little bit. I think, you know, it's because there's just so much, there's just so much music available nowadays online, and you can just put it on a USB key and somehow, I mean, I've done that for the last 10, 15 years. I've been very digital as well as bringing vinyl. But I'm finding now I'm kind of, people I think are demanding me play more vinyl. And I think also as a DJ, you DJ differently when you play vinyl.
Do you?
Yeah, you play, and you play a little bit more, how can I say, it's a little bit less. I think if you've got all this stuff in a USB and you know that there's just heavy hitters in there that'll work every time, then you go to them. You kind of almost, so if you've got like 1,000 tracks on a USB key, and you know that, you know, 100 of those are going to be absolute floor fillers. Everyone's going to jump about safe tracks. Whereas if you bring vinyl and you leave those ones at home, you know, and you just bring music you really want to play, then you have to improvise with that. And so you, in a way, give people a more interesting time. You're less likely to go down the kind of safe route.
Yeah, right. And
as a DJ, I think it's really important to always put yourself in a difficult situation somehow. You know, of course, you don't want to just be that guy who just plays the weird stuff, and you know, people go, "Oh no." But it's like that balance between just constantly, you know. And I think vinyl's allowing me to do that, and a lot more people are pressing on vinyl nowadays. And there's just so much more music that I'm discovering through all these amazing websites and avenues of old music that I just didn't know about. And so I'm sort of, you know, as hungry for old music as I've ever been.
Amazing. So you're still carrying vinyl when you travel? Like next week, you go on tour, you're gonna have your vinyl with you?
Yeah. In America, I'll be bringing some vinyl. Not too much though.
Yeah.
Not too much America. There's a reason for that, but I won't go into that now.
Yeah. Right. Sure thing. Cool. Hey guys, if you've just joined us, this is episode 8 of We Are Listening. This is a live stream that we've pre-recorded, but if you have any questions for us, we're actually here online on the comments, so you can fire away if there's any questions you have for Giles or myself. And I've got some questions here that have been sent in advance by our lovely viewers. So if you've sent one in, thank you so much. Let me see, there's some really, really nice questions here. One of these actually leads on from what we were just saying. This is from Facebook, from James Jordan, who says, does Giles find it easier or harder these days to find new music than earlier in his career? How much is the internet a help or a hindrance, considering the sheer amount available music today? I guess we were just talking about that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, do you get sent loads of music, or do you go and find it, or is it a balance between the two?
Yeah, it's a balance. I think that you can kind of get lazy and just live off what you get sent, which is tons of stuff.
Yeah.
But I still really enjoy going to record shops and getting led by the people working there towards what they're into and hearing the music in that environment. And I think the other thing about record shops is that they all have their own sort of speciality in a way. So in London, there's quite a lot, whether you want to hear kind of independent, minimal techno, or whether you want to hear strange soundtracks from different parts of the world, obscurities, but a lot of new music of all shades and colours and forms. I mean, the other thing at the moment is that there is, as a DJ and as listeners, there's a sophistication about people's tastes that there wasn't years ago. And so people are as likely to dance to an orchestra polyrythmo de Cotonou track from Benin, brilliant African band, to a brand new track from, I don't know, Anderson .Paak, or you know, it can go right across the board. And what's great as well about a lot of the contemporary artists, whether that's trap or footwork or hip hop or soul or house, a lot of them are using music from around the world, exotic music within the textures of the music they're creating. So those lines between some of these artists and the old music is, you can make that connection. Yeah, I think so. For me, you know, being able to be creative as a DJ or broadcaster is brilliant because of the response and the reaction I'm getting. People are feeling that, and as somebody who likes hearing new music and finding it, that combination of going to places where you have experts who are going to say, Giles, you're going to like this track, and have you heard that? I need that. You know, I can't just live off sort of safe people who recommend. I mean, I still, of course, have my people, and we do a lot of exchanges with other DJs and collectors and sort of, you know, and I get a lot of music sent to me. More and more vinyl. Actually, for a while there was no vinyl. Now the postman's busy, you know, he's carrying boxes, you know.
And do you have to have like a structure? You're like, okay, on Monday mornings I sit and listen to the pile of vinyl? Or
Not really. I don't have a structure. I just do listening when I feel like it. I never make this a job. I never. I you know, if I don't feel like listening to music, I won't listen to music, and I don't make it something. Oh yeah, Giles always listens. You must listen to so much stuff. Well, I do, but I listen to it when I feel like listening to it, and so somehow, and even there'll be weeks I'll be on the BBC. I'll do a show on a Saturday, and there'll be weeks when I just haven't felt like listening to new music. I've just wanted to listen to a classic old rock record or whatever, just listen to, or not listen to music at all. Yeah. And then, you know, that will just, and I'll come into my show and I'll just sort of, you know, improvise from, you know, the weeks that have gone from behind, or just go through my records and just pull out a load of stuff and just go that way. I think the moment it becomes work, or, you know, then, you know, you're losing something. So that's my main thing with what I do. You know, this is a privileged job that I've got, and I really love it. But like anything, if you do too much of anything, it can become a chore. So for me, it's just about how do I keep it fresh for myself, and by keeping it fresh is doing other things.
That's really cool, man. So Morgan Gleave, hello Morgan, says, have you got one favourite record of all time?
Of course not.
Do you get asked that a lot?
Yeah, I mean, in a way I do. I mean, I'm sort of, you know, I think when it comes to music, if someone said to me the Desert Island thing, what would you listen to on a desert island? I think it would probably be an instrumental record, because I think if you had to listen to the record over and over and over again, I think the voice would be the first thing that would start annoying you. So I think it becomes more and more ambient and sort of minimal as it goes. So I've been listening to a lot of Japanese composer called Ryuichi Sakamoto recently.
I know him. I went on a boat trip with him.
Oh, okay.
He's a dude.
He's a dude, right? I mean, what an amazing... And I remember I interviewed him recently, and I said to him, what's the perfect sound that you've ever worked with? Because he's done soundtracks and amazing music, electronic music and stuff. And he said, the purest moment I've ever had was when I went to the Arctic.
That's where I was with him.
Oh, is that where you were there? Yeah. And he said that it was the drop... The drop of melted water on the melted sort of ice going into the water. So that was the perfect noise. Sound. So you were on that trip. I was there.
I remember that day he recorded the sound. He was so excited with the sound. He went round everyone on the boat and made us all listen to the sound in headphones.
Right. Yeah.
And he was just so full of something. Yeah. I don't know where it had come from. But
so you can listen to all the music in the world, but at the end of the day, it's that.
It did sound amazing, man. We went on this trip. There's a charity called Cape Farewell, which is like an anti-climate change. Not anti, but like trying to raise awareness. Yeah. And they took a bunch of artists and scientists on this crazy boat trip into the Arctic. And so Ryuichi Sakamoto was on there.
Wow. And
Laurie Anderson was there, and Jarvis Cocker and people like that. And some people from my generation as well, like Katie Tunstall and Martha Wainwright. We just went on this trip, and the goal was to like learn, but also to get inspired and to kind of make work when we got back. And
how long was the boat? How long did it take?
I guess it was about a couple of weeks, or a week and a half, I guess.
You had all that time with those people?
Just on a boat.
Was everyone making music?
lots of music was being made,
bet.
and I organised the Arctic Beatboxing Championship. So I got Raichi Sakamoto and Marcus Brigstock, the comedian, were having a beatboxing battle on this boat floating in the ice. Like, it was very surreal.
That's amazing.
But I got
It's
really
probably
inspired
the
by
most
that.
amazing. I don't think you're going to get any better than that in your life. I wish I'd have been on that boat.
Yeah, man, it was
Brilliant.
inspiring. But yeah, he's a really cool guy, and like I kind of understand what he's saying about like the purity. Do you know what I mean? Of that sound of that ice being melted. Like it's music can be quite full, just can be a lot, can't it, for your brain? So there's something lovely about how pure that sound was.
And I think the older I get, the more minimal it all becomes, and the more simple it needs to be. And sometimes I just can't handle sort of too much stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, other times I love it. There's nothing better than a great sort of. I mean, I saw Sir George with the Heritage Orchestra, so he's got this Brazilian guy who can just sing and play guitar, and then suddenly that's amazing on his own, and then suddenly he's got 50-piece orchestra backing him up. That's beautiful as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like so much variation. But I think at the end of the day, yeah, the simple, minimal sounds are the ones that, I tend to listen to the most when I'm sort of at home.
Yeah. Amazing. Guys, if you have questions for us, just stick them in the comments. And I've got a few here that people have sent in advance. There's one here from Twitter from Alex Salisbury. Hi, Alex, who says there's plenty of research and data that demonstrate a clear link between access to the arts and positive mental health. With a disturbing rise in diagnosed mental health issues among young people and endless cuts to arts provision in schools, what can be done to tackle this issue?
Well, I mean, that's massive. Again, it's about sort of being proactive, and I know that's difficult if you've got the funds or you can't. But I know that, for example, there's an organisation here in London called Tomorrow's Warriors, and they've just had a lot of their funding cut, actually.
Have they?
But what they do, which is amazing, and I'd say if you're interested in jazz and improvised music, get yourself up to the South Bank, where they hold these sort of lessons, these meetings, and it's free, and you can join in and learn amongst amazing musicians and mentors. And the only guideline that they have as Tomorrow's Warriors to those who go through them, who experience that, is that if they become musicians and professional musicians later on, then that they then come back and offer their services for free.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's been an amazing thing.
They've been going since I was a kid, Tomorrow's Warriors.
Yeah, it was Jazz Warriors, then it became Tomorrow's Warriors, and Gary Crosby, the bass player, is the leader of that.
That was always because I was a jazz drummer when I was a teenager. Well, still am, but that was like, wow, those guys are so cool.
Yeah, but right now the sort of the result of the work is unbelievable. The amount of musicians who are coming through and really taking jazz to a new audience, and the community for that music. You can say thank you very much to Tomorrow's Warriors, because you can throw as much kind of government funding into places, and of course it's gratefully received if it's used properly. But a lot of the funding tends to go into the really old-fashioned institutions, and I think that jazz is certainly one institution that hasn't had a lot of support, and it's taken Tomorrow's Warriors to basically create something, a platform like that. And now the results are that you're getting in musicians like Shabaka Hutchins or Nubia Garcia or Moses Boyd. I mean, it's just Steam Down Orchestra. These are all now becoming international groups.
Yeah.
They're touring around the world. Joe Armand Jones. Just so many musicians, and they all came through this. They flowered through the Tomorrow's Warriors, so they can be very proud of what they've done, and I think they've done it very much sort of, from the bottom up. And so of course it's difficult, but I just say to anybody, you have to be proactive and create the community, which can then hopefully, become something.
So what I like about your story is like the word proactive is the exact right word. You know what I mean? You found that inspiration. You didn't sit down and say, oh, I want to do X, Y, and Z. You just started doing it. Do you know what I mean?
But I had privilege. I was already, I was already, middle class white boy from South London. That's a different thing to, working class black boy from Newham, right? So already it's kind of like, well, hang on a minute, it's easy for you. And it's true, it was easier for people like me. But you have to do what you can with what you've got. And I think that we need to support those areas that are underfunded and do our bit. And that's what I'm continually trying to do today. And so from my point of view, where I stand with music today, I have a record label and I have a charity. And the key for me is to try and bring in as many people to give them a starting point to start their journey into music, the arts, media, whatever it is. And so for me, it's an important to be able to. It's a responsibility to make sure that there's an opening for people to come to you to give them that sort of tutelage and mentoring. And actually, the interesting thing is for older people watching this, who are like probably more my generation. I think there's a lot for me. It's a two-way thing. The amount of energy that I gain from working with, the new generations. You need that. So, it's not just give. I'm taking. It's a two-way thing, and so it's not just charity. And it's been an important part for me. I think for how I've sort of maintained some sort of connection with music, because music is, people hear it differently, culture changes, and I think if you surround yourself with yes people and people that your generation all the time, then you're restricted as to what other views and thoughts you're getting. So I think it's very, very important to always keep yourself open to everyone and everything, because everybody's got something to say and something to throw into the conversation.
Awesome. Oh, cool, man. We've got a few more questions here. Someone called, this is from Instagram, this is Jay Purcell. Hi, Jay, who says, Giles always seems so busy with projects and ventures. My question would be, how does he balance his personal and professional life, like having time to spend with family, etc.? This is something that I've really struggled with too.
Yeah, I mean, I have a very supportive family, but they know, in a way, I think my wife, partner, she knows what I need, and I know, and weirdly enough, people used to say, "Oh, Giles, you're never at home." Actually, I am. I'm actually at home a lot more than a lot of 9-to-5 parents. So as my kids were growing up, I was, if I was at home, I was with them a lot. So, but yes, family is really important to me, and it's something that I make sure I find time for. And it's back to what I was saying about listening to music, and sort of I do make sure that I have off times. And in fact, I don't even have a record player in my house.
Really?
You'll be shocked to hear. We have a bit of music in there, which my wife, but I'm not there at home putting records on and that. It's almost like it's whatever everybody else wants to listen to. I don't sort of force it on anyone. But no, I do a lot of other things, which, I mean, one of the things that saved me definitely was exercise and sport. And I think that, you become obsessed by your thing, which was music. And obviously it's quite it's a sort of unhealthy environment a lot of the time when you're working late at night and you're all over the world. And it's like, it's all there for you if you want it. And so there comes a point when you have to sort of just go, well, I'm either going to go down or, I'm going to better myself and better the experience for everybody, including my family, of course. And so for me, the way forwards for that was very much sort of discovering, sort of going back to sport. And there's an awful lot to be said for going for a run or a power walk in the morning or whatever it is. I think it's important just to have that time for yourself to make sure you can kind of clear your head to be a better person. So I'm thankful for that. And for my MC, actually, my MC is an old friend of mine. We've been together for years and years. He goes by the name of general rubbish at the moment. But before that, he's been obviously, and we travel the world together, and he's like been really great in making sure that that I'm the right side of the line most of the time. You know, he's watched over me, and I've been really thankful for that, because I think, again, it's sort of, you can surround yourself, you know, if you know what your weaknesses are, you can actually go down sort of the wrong places sometimes. So I've been very, very lucky to have good people around me.
Yeah, I've been there too, and I feel like you mentioned the word obsession, like, and it's almost like if you're going to have a creative career, you have to have obsession, even though that wouldn't normally be thought of as like a healthy word or a healthy place to be. So then having that balance, like, you know, and I've sat on this sofa and spoken to quite a few people now who've all been really successful in creativity, and they've all had to balance what's basically been an unhealthy amount of obsession. And they've got to a certain point, the point that you're talking about, where they're like, okay, I need to just reel this in a bit. And like, so for young people, like, how I always find this really hard. Like, how can you advise someone who really wants to go out and do something and tell a story? How can you advise them? You know, so how can you teach them to have that balance from that early age? Because it's like you kind of need to be more obsessed than the next person to be able to get ahead.
Well, I mean, I think that the dangers are drugs and drink, and I think that, to be honest with you, they don't help. And that's certainly, you know, energy is the most important thing, and it's short-term energy that they give you, but they don't give you, you know, energy 2 days later. So you might get the little sparkle, the little creative sparkle, but actually in the long run, it doesn't give you. You can get all of that and more if you don't do it. So my recommendation, I know it's really impossible for people to go, oh gosh, shut up.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to have fun. I want to go down the pub and get drunk or whatever it is. But I think, you know, again, it's just, you know, you can get all of all the creative. What you think you only get when you're high or drunk, you can get that when you're not.
Yeah.
And if you can deal with that, and you're going to give yourself such a massive advantage on everybody else. And I think that is one thing that people are sussing out a bit more nowadays, actually. I think my generation, it was all, oh, let's just go mad. There weren't many people in those. It was just like everybody just went in at once, and there wasn't much education. I think nowadays there is a lot more. And I've seen so many people fall. I mean, it's a joke. It's a joke. There aren't many 54-year-old DJs out there.
It's true.
You know, and you know, you need a certain amount of discipline and you know, I remember all the American DJs that were coming over to Europe. I remember thinking, God, all of you, like, all you do is drink water. I was like, how can you do that? And sort
That's
of,
the secret.
I finally understood it, you know. I mean, I still like a beer though.
Yeah, but all in balance.
Yeah.
So Shah Music, also from Instagram, hi, says, how have you dealt with rejection in your music career? Any tips for resilience and keeping on?
I mean, it's just part of the game, isn't it? I mean, you're going to, you know, in a way, I think one of the reasons that I've maintained a sort of career for this long is because I was rejected so much. And so it just gives you that extra added sort of fuel to do your thing, you know. So for me, I think rejection is good. You just got to kind of, you know, get through it and use it to drive you along, really, you know. And so, yeah, as I said to you earlier on, I used to be the guy who used to play the records in the back room, you know, and then suddenly I came up with a term when Acid House came along, which was the first big sort of dance music movement. I was like, because I wasn't playing the same music as the Acid House DJs, I invented a term to say what I was playing called Acid Jazz.
Acid Jazz, yeah.
And so suddenly I ended up being invited to all these places around the world. And I was only playing to small little clubs in England, but I'd come up with this kind of term. And so suddenly I started getting booked around the world to play Acid Jazz, and they just thought I was playing Acid House. So they'd put me on after these mega DJs who were just playing in front of 2,000 people, you know, playing really banging house music, and I'd go on and play weird jazz records and call it acid jazz, and I'd literally see like, you know, 1,800 people leave a dance floor. You know, I mean, I've played in Ibiza, I had people throw bottles at me. I've had all that experience, and I think all of that kind of led me to kind of, you know, that's rejection. You know, on a major deal. So then it's kind of like, how can I do my thing but still gain those guys without losing, you know, what it is that makes me what I am? That was a big sort of challenge for me. So how can I play in the main room but still be the kind of alternative guy? Yeah. So in a way, I've spent the last 20 years just perfecting that, finding a way to be able to go on after, you know, Jeff Mills at Sonar Festival and, you know, not have 8,000 Spanish people kind of having a bad trip, you know. so I think it's just about constantly kind of giving yourself that challenge. Really, I think that's helped me in the long run. You know.
Yeah, I've been reading this book. It's called Help Me, and it's about this lady who decided to do a different self-help book every month, but to follow it like to the letter. And there's one chapter in there called Rejection Therapy. So apparently there's this whole movement called Rejection Therapy, where every day you have to go out and get rejected. If you don't get rejected, then you failed for that day. And that apparently gets harder and harder. So it starts off, you just have to like ask for a free coffee or something. But the more you put yourself out there and the more you try and get rejected, the more people start saying yes. So then it becomes harder to get rejected. And I think that's amazing. Like a whole part of what's held me back, I feel like, is that fear of being rejected. So you're like, oh no, I won't even do it. I won't even ask. But the more you kind of, you know, if you can go and ask for rejection, like I asked the Prodigy if they'd come on this show, said no, but I was like, you know, there's a 1% or like a 0.5% that they might have said yes, and like then that might have happened. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I was nervous to ask you. You said yes. It's like, do you know what I mean? You've got to embrace that rejection, right?
Yeah, and take it, and you know, and it upsets you, and it makes you sort of think differently. I love agitators. I think you need agitation as well. So you know, this whole concept of this woman being rejected. Yeah, you know, it's about agitation as well. It's about sort of, you know, throwing a situation in front of someone who's going to react, be surprised as to, you know, how. So you're kind of doing that, and I think that that's an important part of the culture of what we do. I mean, again, you've got to remember what we're in. I'm in music, and so, you know, if it becomes too safe or we were always about. That's what's so brilliant about Britain and British music. I've always felt, it's like people say to me, well, could you live somewhere else? I said, to be honest, not really, because the thing about Britain is that it's always reinventing itself. There's always kind of all kinds of rejection and competition, and it's hard. It's a heavy scene. But what that means is, it just means that people are just pushing themselves extra hard to create something which is original. And so that's why in this country you have grime, or you have dubstep, or you have jungle, or you have acid house, I mean, punk music, you know, all the rock and roll groups, you know, all the psych rock, all that. I mean, we have the most, for a small island, our sort of imprint in music globally is phenomenal. We are really, you know, punching above our weight. And so whether that's Manchester, Liverpool, London, Glasgow, all these, you know, everywhere, Bristol, amazing cities that have really had a huge impact. So I'm so happy to be part of that and to represent that as well. You know, when I go around the world, people listen to me, they want to hear what's going on. They see me as a bit of a sort of British sort of, representing a culture, a music culture here. But when I bring the music back to Britain and I'm on the BBC doing my show, then the British people expect me to be introducing them to all this stuff from around the world. So I have this interesting relationship. But my home, HQ, definitely UK, which makes it difficult for me, being that I don't even have a British passport.
Really?
And that I'm gonna have to go and get myself a passport now.
Jesus,
because of the imminent changes of this country. I'm sure I'll be alright.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll let you stay.
Yeah, I hope so.
Amazing. Well, should we do a few little quick fire ones, because so many people sending questions, which is lovely. And I feel like it would be nice just to get through a few of them before we finish up. Natty Speaks, also on Instagram, says, if there is one piece of advice Giles could give to artists in this age, what would it be?
Listen to, don't become too caught up in yourself. You know, I think it's really important. I've seen so many people, you know, especially these days with social media and everything, you know, you can suddenly be glorified and you forget. Be humble. Humility is so important in this game. And I think that as long as you keep your feet, I know that sounds obvious, but it's very easy to suddenly have a hit record or a hit, you know, SoundCloud or whatever. You know, you're having hit, people are talking about you, and then it's like, you know, you get a little bit like that. And I think you've always got to remember that, you know, there's a lot of other people who are better than you. And don't, you know, yeah, you can be great, but just remember to keep your feet on the ground. Honestly, that's really important.
Humility. Awesome. Another quick one. This is also from James Jordan. Are there any music or travel experiences that really stand out above all the others?
Mate, any time that I can stand in front of people or sit, whichever it is, where I can play music and people are actually interested in what I've got to say is unbelievable, and I appreciate all of it. So, you know, whether it's playing in a backroom pub in, you know, Slough, or whether it's playing in a beautiful bespoke analog sound system museum in Sapporo, Japan, you know what I mean? It's like at the end of the day, it's like music, communication, the joy of life. You know, I appreciate that so much. And, you know, it could be anywhere. I've had the best times in the most surprising places, you know. The best moments for me is when I'm DJing, is when, you know, when I go abroad, they usually let me play for as long as I want. They're too scared to say stop. And so, and you know, whereas in Britain it's like, okay, it's 3 o'clock, the security guard out, finish, you know, forget it. But in other places, and so sometimes, you know, you can play all night until the sun comes up or whatever, or you know, if you're outdoors, it's amazing. And then you can get to this stage where you can play just beautiful kind of jazz records, you know, and people are still dancing. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that for me, you know, when people are just dancing to unfamiliar, beautiful music. That is a great, you know, that is just the most unbelievable feeling. And I think that's why I like DJing so much, because you can't really get that from being on the radio or, you know, running a record label. But when you can be in a happening, a place where people are together to experience, you know, a united emotion, when you get to that point when, you know, you are all together, you don't know anybody, and there's all strangers, and we're all having the best time. It's amazing.
Love it, man. That's amazing. I think there's 3 more here. Is it 4 more? Well, this one's about you getting into radio work, which we've kind of covered. Martin Barnford says, who was your inspiration to get you both into music? I guess that's aimed at both of us. Like, so you mentioned already those first records you heard was like Earth, Wind and Fire. Like that. That's cool.
What about you?
Well, my dad's a jazz guitarist, so I kind of got heavily into jazz when I was like in my teens. But before that, it was like the Prodigy. It was all about the Prodigy, and that's the first tape I had that was like mine. Wasn't my brother. No, before that.
Before that, right? Before they made it big.
Yeah, before they made it big. My Prodigy Experience was this tape. I don't know where I got the tape from, but it just blew my mind. So I don't know. I've just been about 9 years old. Last question here from Jeremy Oldfield. Hi, Jeremy. He says, what are Giles's go-to therapy tracks? I guess we all have tunes that we default to when we're feeling overwhelmed. Yeah. Sometimes they help, other times they might make things even worse. But it'd be interesting to see if Giles has any tunes that are guaranteed to help him.
Yeah, it's interesting. Very good question. I mean, the thing is for me, and I've said this a lot of times, I think, you know, talking to someone when you've got things to talk about is really important. But there's moments that you just need, you're down, you know, and you just need to kind of find a way out. And for me, music's always been the saviour. I've been really lucky about that. And you know, I can be really sad about stuff, and music usually always comes to my rescue. I love a singer called Terry Callier. I think he made some, for me particularly, shall we say, sort of medical music, music that, you know, treated my soul and my health. And so there's a record by him called What Colour Is Love. It's a beautiful album produced by an arranger called Charles Stepney. I often go back to that record. That's a great record. You know, any good jazz, you know, Wayne Shorter, Speak No Evil album, amazing. Yeah. Newer stuff, you know, yeah, I mean, new stuff I like. I mean, I'm trying to think what's really, what new artists. Lonnie Holly, do you know Lonnie Holly? No, he's really interesting. I mean, yeah, there's loads of stuff, but I mean, music is doing me a favour. But Terry Callier, go to him.
Amazing. Guys, thank you so much for all these awesome questions. It's been really beautiful to kind of hear from you guys, and thanks for being part of this. And a massive, huge thanks to Mr. Gilles Peterson for giving us his time, his love, and his energy. Giles, where can we follow what you're doing? What's happening next for you that we can support you with?
I don't know. I mean, yeah. I mean, if I get, I mean, I'm on Gilles Peterson on Twitter, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Facebook. Oh yeah, I don't answer every. I notice some people that anyone writes something on Twitter and they always retweet. I don't do that. Is that bad? I don't really.
It's up to you.
I do direct messaging sometimes, but it's difficult to answer to everyone. I don't. You either in or out. I try not to be completely in, if you know what I mean.
But how else can we follow what you're doing? So you're touring at the moment.
Yeah, touring always, never stop touring.
Yeah.
I've got a new festival that I've just launched called We Out Here Festival, which is going to be sort of very much based around that jazz thing that we were talking about earlier on. Cool. It's happening near Cambridge in August. I do a festival in France called the Worldwide Festival in Sète, which is probably the best thing I do. I enjoy a lot. It's an 8-day marathon. Amazing. Day and night, and I do a show on BBC Radio 6 every Saturday afternoon, radio station called Worldwide FM, record label called Brownswood Recordings. There you go, it's me.
It's so much to swallow. That's amazing, man. So thank you so much for coming and being part of this, man. It means a lot to me. And thank you guys for tuning in. If you want to hear this episode back and the previous episodes, you can go to skshlomo.com/wearelistening. We are now an audio podcast, which was really exciting. So we're kind of gradually releasing all the previous episodes. If you want to hear my chats with Jason Mraz or Bill Bailey, they are now available as an audio podcast. Again, at skshlomo.com/wearelistening. But yeah, please do feel like you can talk. There's so many ways that we can embrace everything that happens, both good and bad in our lives. And I've only been doing this whole process to help myself, and I'm really grateful to all the hundreds of messages you guys send me saying that it's helped you, and I'm so happy that it's helped you. But it's for me, really. And we can all do that. We can all express ourselves truthfully and honor our goods and our bads. So thank you again for tuning in, and I'll see you again very soon. Take care. Goodbye.